This film was actually John's first major role as an actor. He was in a film in Sydney a few years before that, practically accidentally, and then he came to Melbourne, and he was given a position in the Cinema Studies department of La Trobe. Can you tell us the process that led to this particular moment?
Well, yeah, there's a fair bit to that, I suppose, but what was going on at La Trobe Uni leading up to 1972 was a tendency within humanities, with a strong force coming from Patricia Edgar, to have cinema studies accepted as a subject for the 3 stages in the BA. And she hadn't yet got that agreement from the Board of Studies at La Trobe itself. She invited me to come down and be part of the department of the School of Education. And in the time that I worked there, giving I nearly said talks, didn't I? Lectures to student teachers. Part of also what I'd be doing is making submissions to the Board of Studies for cinema studies to become a subject. That took 3 years, 72, 3-4. But Patricia was able to. Well, she's great, what's that word again? Politician? Operator. So she was able to get other people to come down and be part of the staff, etc. And she got this bloke from overseas, David Jones. And, Dave come over and he lectured to students there, and they did work on, mainly on documentary. But Dave had these ideas for film, and one of the things that had been going on in the 60s and then coming into the 70s was the formation of a Australian Film Commission, and there was now some money that's, what do you call it again, the taxpayers' money, that would be given each year to filmmakers for non-commercial productions, which could be of any kind, from traditional and orthodox through to experimental and just about anything except obscene. Well, Dave Jones puts in an application for that, and he gets sufficient money, not a lot of money, but sufficient to pay for most of the what are we going to call them, the replacements and the renewables. What Patricia had succeeded in doing, even by that time, before cinema studies was itself an actual course at La Trobe, she had persuaded the university to install sorry, this is me having a problem just now, a studio, broadcast standard studio, for a television studio, and also to have the funding, university funding, for some technicians. That's what was there. So Dave knows that, his teaching at La Trobe is full-time business. The application for the money from Board of Studies, etc., was successful. They gave him some money because he'd submitted the script. And he was going to get various people who were on the staff there at La Trobe to play various parts. Well, God blimey, didn't we play up? I mean, we weren't all from La Trobe, no, but most were. And so Dave was more impressed than I'd been aware by everything that had been happening in the 60s in European film. And Godard was the person he talked about the most, and you did hear a mention of Godard there in that film just now.
Just one.
Only one reference, but still. But Dave was going to play with, I haven't got the words, cripes. This to me, this is just a delight in playing games with terminology and testing just how many possible meanings can they have apart from the one that's in the dictionary. And that's what he did again and again with it. And, he asked me to be one of the characters, and what I was really doing was being myself. That other role that I played a couple of years earlier at Sydney, I played myself again in that. See, I'd read a lot where I could about acting, the art of performance, both for theatre and for camera. Read a lot about it, but didn't expect that I could do it myself. When I'd been in high school and joined the little drama company that was there, and I would be with others, we'd sit down and we'd read scripts and all the rest of it, but I never got cast in anything. So that was telling me something, you know. So far as a high school student anyway, I didn't have what it takes to even put me in the play. And I had in other things that I was interested in, like in tennis and cricket. I was interested in both of those. I studied them wherever I could and whatever, played. But I realised there, you know, I got to play A reserve tennis and sub-district cricket and did play one rep game, but I knew I wasn't going to go on and play Test cricket or Davis Cup or anything of that kind. I tried to learn as much as I could about it, and so that was it, was my interest in it, but no expectation that I could make a living out of it. Now, that was pretty much the same approach to the acting.
You can't just be yourself in this film. You know, that goes nowhere. You can't, say, play a role, that kind of thing. Somehow, we have to create something, you know. We have to create something in this film. That's the task that's before us. I know it's not easy, but I'm working on it.
Look, Maurice, you're not going to get anything progressive done at all the way you're working here. There's nothing effective's going to come out of this. The first thing you've got to do, we just got to sit down and talk about it.
No.
Cut your bloody camera.
We cannot sit down and talk about it. We got to think up an idea. Now, perhaps this stuff will help. I don't know.
But look, what do you got the camera running for? Do you want to put every bloody thing in your film, do you?
Look, man, will you stop that? I'm taking the risk here. It's not you. What are you so worried about? This gripes me, you know. I'm the one who's I'm even thinking while I'm trying to handle you guys who are screwing up everything.
What I'd done in both of these was behave. I'd been myself. You know, I mean, all I was doing there was though I was given a few lines of dialogue to speak and all the rest of it, the characters I was playing were people like myself. My own personality, my range of interests and background and whatever. So, and the emotional range and how I responded to situations. There was nothing going on in this film that wasn't me anyway.
But that changed.
Oh, it did after, yeah.
A couple of years later,
It
you
did
were offered all these different kind of roles.
Because of this film and Michael's film as well. Various people making independent pictures, again, you know, the ones that weren't professional, would approach me and ask me to be in and do something in their films. And so I did end up playing roles that were the characters I was playing were not myself any longer, but someone else.
What do you think attracted these scriptwriters, filmmakers? I imagine actually it's something to do with your physique as well.
Oh, well, maybe it was. I mean, looking at this here, I can't be sure. You know, I mean, I was 40 years of age when we made this.
And were you doing film buffs at the same time?
No, not yet. No, that came considerably later. So the Film Buffs broadcast didn't start until the end of the 80s, right. Considerably later. So
the beginning of the 80s. Yeah, beginning of the 80s.
Oh, beginning. It was. Thank you. I'm sorry. It was the beginning of the. I'm sorry. Yes, and it. I stayed on Film Buffs then until the middle of the 80s, or maybe a bit later.
Bit more.
Yeah. It didn't last an entire decade. But in becoming an actor, no, I'm not intended to. So, and though it's not relevant to Dave's film any longer, but for me, the next role that I played was one in which I had been shown the script and asked by the two writers of the script. They were students at Swinburne. This was to be their graduation film. It would run about 3/4 of an hour. I mean, when it was made, it ran 53 minutes. And they asked me, the two of them, that's the director and the cinematographer, to have a look at the script and see what I thought of it. Well, I had a look of it and I thought, oh yeah. And of course, even at that time, I had not, nor had these two young men, because they're both in their early 20s, that was John Owain. Okay, so we know what the film is now, don't we?
We're screening it in a few months here.
And we are.
Right here.
And yes, that's, and it's and Ellery Ryan. They were co-writers. Ellery did camera, John directed. But when they asked me for an opinion, what did I think about the script? what struck me there was that this was the closest thing to social realism, what they had written, of anything that I'd seen on screen yet that had been made in Australia by Australians.
It's interesting for me, John, because as you were growing up and in your early 20s and with some of the positions you held as well, you had a real affinity for the working class and for ordinary people and their struggles. So in a way, you're kind of playing not the tortured academic, as you always like to play, but you're playing something that you kind of knew about in a way.
Oh, and I did, because look, I grew up in that sort of blue collar mean streets in Sydney, and my old man was as a blue collar battler. And so were most of my cousins, and a few of them had done time here and there and so forth. And the way they saw society was that some people get partly educated, but they learn some kind of a job, and maybe some even get to have a trade. And then there's the other members of society, and they're the ones who read the books and go to the opera and so forth. And we don't know much about them, and they don't know about us neither. And that was my old man's attitude to things. But when I read the script that these boys showed me, and I thought, and I had not at that time, nor had they, I had not read, nor was I familiar with Sam Beckett's play, Waiting for Godot. But what the boys had written was actually like that. Two middle-aged blokes battling around, or I call it mean streets, and they're talking about a future different from the present. And it's beauty, and so these
the
are two
film's called
blokes,
Queensland.
and it's called Queensland, and here are a couple of Melbourne
dream to go to
battlers. They're
Queensland.
going to go to Queensland, and it's good, and the weather's up there, and there's jobs, and there's money. People are good up there too, Yeah, righto. But are we ever going to get there? So when I read it, I was so impressed by that. But what hit me was, of the two characters, one of them was like a portrait of my old man, who's a different bloke from me. My old man was. He was different from me, of course. There's some of him in me, of course, but still, we were different people from an early age for me. But I saw this bloke there, and I know this bloke. And I told him that, and so John Ryan said to me then, well, do you think you could act that role? And this would have been acting, because I would then be playing someone different from myself. And I couldn't be sure about it. John arranged to have a couple of screen tests done, and I satisfied him, and he gave me the part. And then I found out I could act, because those two roles are the one we've just looked at. For instance, I didn't know I was an actor. I mean, I was just performing as myself, just showing off there on camera.
Sure.
But looking at it afterwards, this film for me is so delicious, deliciously funny, intricate. It's setting up one kind of irony after another. To me, irony is such an important value in any kind of statement or artwork that we make, where after some apparent system of reality and ostensible truth is presented, but then there are other dimensions, and they can be equally as truthful or substantial. To me, that irony, that's the reason you heard me make a reference in the film there about von Sternberg. To me, that's Joseph von Sternberg's films at the beginning of sound were great examples of irony, because they were, almost all of them just read the Dietrich phenomenon as being about glamour and all that stuff. But what each of the films supplies is another way of seeing that, another set of dimensions by which the story, what it's about, its values, its insights, they can be seen in another system of values, not the one on which the production has been sold to the public. But generations after those early films were made, I'm still reading commentaries that aren't aware of any of the ironies. But to me, that was so important, that irony. Now, Dave's script had more stuff going on and more ways of saying, well, here is something to, maybe we believe in that, but no, there's another way to say it. And maybe this, maybe the other, and you never gave chance a chance, etc. And so many ironic statements. And Dave Jones wrote all these, and they were such a pleasure to read.
That's part of what the film is doing, obviously, the deconstruction of the deconstructive cinema in a way.
Yes.
The self-reflexive, on self-reflexive cinema.
And it's the deconstruction of deconstruction.
It can go really into a myriad kind of directions and
Well, doesn't
the
do
details.
that. Yeah. And it's pointing out to us again and again something that we know we're aware of, and yet we try not to be at the time, and that is the illusion, the cinematic illusion. But here was an illusion that itself was presenting something which was the insight into an illusionist process, and yet it was an illusion that was doing that. So how can you have an illusion that reliably presents the nature of illusion? Well, that's what he did again and again in this film.
Maurice, look, you've rejected our ideas for this film. Now, what have you got better to replace them?
I'm going to kill myself.
You know, Von Sternberg stands in the same relation to sound film as Edmund Spenser does to modern English.
Oh, I can't accept that at all.
I think there's much to be said for that.
But why Spencer? I think a lot of Russian novels would stand
Maurice,
out of your brain.
you can't.
The
I mean,
sentimentality of the
you're
whole thing
kidding.
wrecks any sort of
They won't have Maurice to kick around
No, I
anymore,
can't see that.
Carolyn.
You see,
Maurice.
because...
Ethics are the aesthetics of the future, Carolyn.
But not necessarily in that order.
would be the foremost example.
It was clever.
Works
A bit too clever.
You know,
Don't you, too, start competing with me.
Hitchcock
Look,
and Manelli.
This can still be a cooperative film if you guys will just stop competing with me and do what I say.
Take the way the American Paris stuff.
I'm sorry, Carolyn.
All these sort
We'll
of
go
shots
outside and I'll
of the
explain it to
Eiffel
you.
Tower,
I'll need a
the
camera and a dolly.
And Kelly's voice is on the background, saying how he's got lots and lots of friends.
Yeah, real Fitzpatrick travelogue stuff, yeah. Go on,
And sort of slowly moving.
Roll camera. Come on, roll camera. Hurry up, Trudy. Why are you so slow? Carolyn, that first idea, that wasn't any good. It's a cliche, Carolyn, blowing up something like that. And not only that, Carolyn, I don't know if we had the resources for it. Watch the steps, Carolyn. It costs a lot of money to blow up a corporation, Carolyn.
Do you know of any other films in that period that look at that kind of, Godardian self-reflexive cinema in that kind of way, like as a comedy, as a satire?
Look,
There's
I don't.
not too many.
No,
There's
I mean,
hardly, yeah.
I have to announce, though I know some people who are aware of it already, I've been diagnosed almost a year ago now with Alzheimer's, and I am affected. There are some things I forget. My memory has got holes in it. It's not. I don't suffer from false memory, so far as anyone's so far told me anyway. It's just lost memory. But what I do remember is still pretty strong. However, other things have gone. And in answer to your question, Bill, I can't for the moment think of anything else. No. I mean, Godard here and there is doing that in his films, of course. But an entire film of feature length that continues through this process, and no, I don't know of any other.
I think there's lots of films about mad directors who have incredible visions, and then it all falls apart on them and that kind of thing. But I'm thinking more specifically this particular point, early 70s, kind of agitprop cinema, but really more. I don't know, how can I put it? I think there's a seeming importance to the project of, certainly to politics generally at the time, late 60s, early 70s. And because of that, I feel that a lot of filmmakers or a lot of commentators couldn't really, mock or criticise the attempts of people to have peace in the world. Who could walk up to John Lennon at the time and say, what's this give peace a chance slogan? Isn't it a bit kind of silly? And, so you feel like you can't attack these kind of artists.
Yeah.
So maybe, but Dave Jones, I don't know, being in a foreign country for him, he just thought, I'm just going to let loose. And
and yet, Dave's from day-to-day behaviour doesn't have all that Maurice stuff to it. I mean,
he was a reserved kind of guy.
Yeah. And after he returned to America, he stayed on it. I think it was for only 2 years, but I may be wrong. It may have been longer than 2 that he stayed on staff there at La Trobe Uni, and cinema studies got started. 1975 was the first year that cinema studies was a subject open for study, and for the record, I designed the course, and did lecture in it, yes, along with a few other people. Dave went back to America, When I was in the United States for a brief time in 2005, I went to visit him at Philadelphia, and he's the dean of drama studies and drama media at Drexel University. He got to be a dean. Now he was just a battler on the staff at La Trobe, and wow.
Did he direct films? Did he make some documentaries?
He made documentaries, yeah, and he had, before he came to Australia, he'd done that. One of the things I was interested in doing was in visiting his setup there at Drexel, and I said, you really ought to be putting up somewhere here in the central office that poster from your film. He says, no, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want him to talk about it. Now, I cannot, if I had to testify on oath, I can't be sure whether he said, I don't want to talk about it, or I don't want them to talk about it. I can't remember which, but it was one or the other of those things he said. So, so far as his colleagues were concerned at Drexel, by 2005, this picture he made back in Australia was not a subject.
I heard you say before that you hadn't seen the film since its release. That can't be right.
So far as, again, at that time, and that's around 74 and 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then I had that...
Has no one asked you to talk about it, to be at a screening since then? Oh, right.
And then I moved from Sydney to Melbourne at the in 76. So I'd got cinema studies going in that first year of 1975, but then something else was happening in Australian film culture at that time, in the politics of Australian film culture, and that is a national film and television school was being set up. So that bumbling, accented old gentleman that we saw in the film tonight was the bloke who'd set up the whole filmmaking school in Poland in the earlier times, Yoshi Teplitz, and he'd come to La Trobe Uni, and his presence was, and that was all part of Tricia's politicking, but his presence was an important force in getting acceptance of cinema studies as a university subject, to bring this professor from overseas. And he'd been a professor in Europe, but he'd also done things in the USA, and now he'd come to Australia for a while. So he turns up in Dave's film, and that's kind of fun also.
But film production itself doesn't really get going at La Trobe. It transfers to Swinburne and...
Swinburne, they were still, yes, they're making film, because Swinburne was about teaching people how to make
Swinburne
pictures.
started 69 or 68 anyway. Yeah.
And Brian Robertson got that underway, but the interesting thing there was that Brian's position was that one of the units that had to be taught, apart from all of the hands-on production of movies, was something about the history of the art form. So I was there for a while doing that, but I ran into so much struggle with the hands-on teachers, because they saw me as being some kind of a remote, sort of egghead. What I didn't, as far as they were concerned, because I didn't understand all of the hands-on realities of filmmaking, therefore I was a dangerous distraction to the students by showing them art films. But I didn't. It wasn't just art films. I would also show them films. But one of the problems I ran into there was arranging with a television station in Melbourne, Channel 7 it was, that they would lend from time to time Swinburne, and later on when I was at La Trobe, do the same thing. They would lend films that were in their holdings to the university to show. And so I managed to get a couple of things that way. But then I asked for a von Sternberg film, the Dishonoured, which to me is it's in the top 20 of all time. So the answer I got to that from the librarian at Channel 7 was, you can't tell me that a film with Marlene Dietrich is a work of art. And that was the end of it. They stopped lending. See, they'd been lending the films because they were works of art for university. But a picture with Dietrich in it couldn't be a work of art. So clunch, that was the end of that arrangement. But that attitude was one that was held by some of the actual teachers, both there and in 1976. So in 75 we get cinema studies going at La Trobe. In 76 I go to Sydney because that's the first year in which the National Film and Television School gets underway, and I'm there to be looking after the education element. I ran into the same problem again with the hands-on teachers up there. They really didn't consider that our students should be shown any kinds of films except the ones that were works of art. And almost always that meant that the film's subject or some aspect of approach that it took to a subject was one that was, what's the word I want, part of that upstairs, I'm not sure the words I want here, but the elite artworks, the fine works of art.
Steve, I'm not going to hurt Carolyn. I need her. Dumb as she is, she's twice as interesting as you guys are.
Oh, you're mad, you bastard.
Carolyn, don't masturbate on camera.
Outrageous. Completely outrageous, Maurice. You're just using it to try and get a few cheap sex jokes in your film.
Sig, we want a film that'll change the world. To do that, we have to get an audience. Now, to achieve that goal, I'll do whatever's necessary. Won't you, Zig? You're not afraid to get your hands dirty, are you, Zig?
Look, why don't you take off your clothes? You make Carolyn take off her clothes. Go on, take your clothes off. Put your cards on the table. Lay it on the line. Everything open and above board. Let it all hang out, Maurice.
All right. You don't think I'll do it, do you? Won't ask Carolyn to do anything I'm not prepared to do. Take a bit of time, just hang on.
That was disgusting, Maurice. I mean, it made me sick. It was terrible.
That was an alienating device, Sig.
I think you
It's
might
not
have-
all right. It's, you know, we can cut it out later.
I want to go back to Peter O'Brien because as part of the Melbourne Filmmakers Co-op in 1975, this film was screened and Peter was projecting or presenting. Projecting, yeah.
One of the projections.
Yeah. What do you remember about response from the people gathered?
Very little, actually.
Yeah? They're too cool for school,
I
yeah.
remember very, very few comments from audience members.
Really?
I don't think I can remember any.
Mm.
After walking out of this film, they weren't talking about it, or?
Walking out?
Well, they weren't talking to the projectionist anyway.
No. By walking out, I do mean after it's over.
Oh,
yes. They weren't, eh? Yeah. It is such a sophisticated film.
Yeah,
It really is, isn't it?
I remember the screenings, but sort of, it was enjoyable. We all came out of it buoyed up and feeling like it was fun.
Good, I'm glad to hear that.
It was pretty exciting to see a feature with people that we knew.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And done in town.
Yeah.
And, you know, sort of, there's the string of others that sort of, you know, came out after that. But the co-op just burnt through people's films, you know. We had to run something every week, you know, and usually it was, you know, filmmakers that had brought their films. You know, if we hadn't actually got round to saying, have we got permission to run this? You know,
Yes.
they'd bring the film up themselves and we'd go, oh, well, we didn't have anything else interesting on that night, you know, so you know, we'd run it. But, you know, we're making posters and things in advance. And I think Dave came with his own poster because
Yeah, he
still
had one.
kept a couple of those.
Yeah.
And silk screened little gems.
I don't think I've ever seen the poster for Yackety Yack.
I was just telling Bill before I had two of them, and I gave one to Acme, and I thought I had another one which I was going to bring tonight, which I thought would have been fun. Couldn't find.
Did the film have like a bigger screening? I don't think it was at MIF or anything like that. Can anyone
No, I don't
remember
think it
any?
was, no.
Yeah.
No, but at that time, 74, I'm not surprised about that. I think there were so many fine films being made that were not, they just weren't commercial. There wasn't a market out there waiting for them. Look, we know this applies to other arts as well, to painting and music and even to poetry. Some fine stuff that never reaches more than a already specially interested minority and doesn't get out to the larger public. In the case of film, it is, after all, the most expensive art form ever devised. I mean,
not necessarily, John.
Oh, well, if for comparable size. No, but for comparable size, because as we know, it's only in this past generation that even in the skyline of our cities have we seen that the temples of commerce have now outgrown the temples of worship. Yes, cathedrals were the most expensive forms of architecture at one time, but your feature film that's going to go on release around the world is going to cost more than your cathedral.
I was just going to make the point that I also projected Queensland along with other people during the projection of the show.
Yep, cool.
And I do. This is. God, is it getting on for 50 years now?
Queensland we made in 75 and it was,
yeah.
And it was released in 76.
Yeah. I do remember a kind of warm glow from audiences after seeing Queensland.
Oh yeah? Oh.
And that's pretty weak even as anecdotal evidence, but you only get tiny hints from audiences if you are the projectionist. Because most people don't know what projectionists are.
It comes magically through from the heavens, yeah.
But they're the same people who get up and leave the theatre when the end credits are rolling, those people. And at Castlemaine Cinema, on a few occasions, it's been heard, a voice, "Sit down, the picture's not over yet."
Wow.
From old Krusty. I don't do it every time, but I do on occasions.
You're an anarchist.
Yeah. But it's that same, unfortunately.
But you don't feel so sort of warm when you know that it was the person on the shift of the multiplex who pushed play, and it's going to automatically cut out at the same time as the lights come up.
Oh.
You know, you don't know that the man in the booth is kind of actually keeping an eye on it.
No.
Jake, you had a question a moment ago?
I had two things on my mind actually. One is, it sounds like Dave Jones never made any effort to bring it to America, to show it to an American audience.
As far as I know, he didn't.
I feel like it still kind of awaits discovery that Americans still might be interested in it.
Oh, Jake, that's a great idea. I wonder. Even in the short time that I was in America and actually, visited Dave and so on, I never thought to put that to him. But yeah, maybe that's so. I mean, just that he didn't want the poster to be on display at the uni. For anyone to ask, "Oh, is that a picture you made, Professor?" No. But please, you had another point.
The other question was about your character, and your character's kind of enigmatic, and there's that one moment where he's going to reveal his motivation and then decides not to. And you never really know quite why he's sticking with this lunatic as long as he is. But how did you think about that as an actor playing the character?
Oh, I just enjoyed the ideas, but I thought I was playing with ideas rather. I wasn't acting in any sense, but still just sort of behaving really. if we were to make a picture like that again, and if I would have asked for anywhere to play such a character again in a drama like that, I'd now have to do a lot of thinking now that I didn't do then, because since I've become a professional actor, because the memory of virtually my career is over, but nonetheless, if I were capable of doing that, I'd now have to think about those lines in a way that I didn't back then. I just delighted in how many ideas are flying around here, and how many struggles are there going on with concepts and attitudes, and so it was delicious to play the part. But that's selfish of me to say that, but I couldn't be that selfish next time.
It was all scripted, definitely. There was no room for.
Oh, we played up a little bit, but yeah.
Those bits where, like they're kind of cut. You know, like you start saying something and it cuts. Like, were there any lines created and then cut out, or was it just designed like that, where you say, "I'll tell you what it is," and then you stop the take? Or
I think they were all cut at the points where they were scripted. But
So
again,
actually
memory's not reliable here for me.
Yeah, sure.
But I got no memory of having said lines and then found out that they were cut in the final version. I don't think so. I mean, the script had so many cuts in it. You know, they're scripted as cuts.
Yeah.
Oh, gee. And sometimes there's an actual comment on screen to say there's been a cut.
Yeah.
And the number of times he says to Caroline, "I didn't like that, Caroline," or "You shouldn't say that, Caroline." How many times did Caroline get cut? But all of those were set up. I mean, and I can tell you confidently, my memory tells me that Caroline didn't have any comments to say. You know, where he would say to her, "What do you think about that, Caroline?" And then we'd cut to, and he'd say, "That's no good, Caroline," or whatever his comments were. No, that Caroline's the comments that Caroline made and were cut were never scripted and never spoken. No.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone else?
I just out of interest, when the film was initially made, was it actually shown to the contemporary student audience, either at La Trobe or Swinburne, so you could have that sort of vibe?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't officially done now. That doesn't mean that someone couldn't have laid it. But 16mm print, I doubt if there were at that time. I don't think there were copies of it that were easy to lay hands on. You know, and there weren't any DVDs at that time of it. No, I think not. And so far as I'm aware, the Swinburne people didn't look at it, neither staff nor students.
John, later in 1982, I think Nigel's here tonight. I'm pretty sure I saw Nigel screened it for us in 82.
In 82? Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's a little bit later.
Oh, well. Yeah. And was there any kind of a rumbling response? Do you know?
Oh, No, I mean, I actually feel very. I remember feeling very young at the time. But thinking this was really exciting. But Nigel did show pretty good stuff.
Oh, good on you, mate. I didn't know Nigel had done that. No.
Yeah.
It was great.
Nigel's here.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I might mention he even made a film in later years called Carlton plus Goddard equals Cinema, and it got about as much screening as Yackety Yack.
You've got excerpts from Yackety Yack in it. Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
So I regard it with the highest merit, a wonderful anarchist triumph.
Yeah.
Well, also recently, about 10 years ago, Margot Nash, who's a known filmmaker in Sydney, she was teaching at the University of Technology, Sydney, up until recently, and it's actually through her efforts that this particular screening copy was done. It's it's not high definition because they couldn't go back to the original neg or anything, so they just took a 16mm print and just did a pretty reasonable quality digital transfer of it.
Yeah.
So she has shown her students these kind of films recently, and someone like Peter Tammer in his time at Swinburne and VCA, he also showed interesting Australian independent films to the students.
Peter did, yes.
And so I don't know. This film, it was screened last year in a festival called Cinema Reborn. For those of you who know it, in Sydney, where they take restored versions of like overseas films and some Australian ones, and they showed it. In fact, no, they showed it in 2019, early 19. But I found out that MIF, for example, have no interest in putting a retrospective screening on, and in fact, my interest in putting this on tonight is kind of the only interest the film has just at the very moment.
Bloody
apart
hell.
from that Cinema Reborn screening,
God.
Which was early last year. So it's kind of sad. Some films are like cult items that remain destined to not really be rediscovered in a big way, but at least in a small way.
In a small way.
We have
so
that at least.
It's got to go international, hasn't it? Oh, I mean, there's got to be people in other parts of the world who really would be excited. Not just entertained, no, more than entertained. Actually, you're looking at it here tonight, my thinking was stirred. You know, I mean, I'm thinking hard about issues that
it would have a huge audience of certain kind of cinephiles interested in that period and everything. Peter, just
question for John. I don't know whether this is. Can you remember everything you've done with John Wayne?
No, I couldn't remember everything, but
I mean, I don't mean every detail. I mean, how many films you've done with him? Because I'm thinking about, you've done at least Queensland, and you've done another one,
Feathers,
in which you play a bandit.
Bandits.
Oh, what's that? See, this has been memory. I have forgotten some films I've been in. I've occasionally been. People have greeted me and remember we did so and so, and my memory has failed. I played a bandit, but what the contemporary time or historical bandit? You know, something John made.
I don't know if it was John Wayne. I was wondering if that was another film you did with John Wayne.
No, I drove a cab in Death in Brunswick. Yeah, but that was a cab driver in one scene.
And in Feathers, you have a small. I haven't seen it for a while, but just we're playing that one along with Queensland in a few months' time. I'm not sure, can't remember when. But
John, what was the film you were flung into a swimming pool somewhere up in the Dandenongs with a remake of Sunset Boulevard, perhaps? You had a couple of bricks, and when you'd been down for 10 seconds, they all thought the old guy's going to drown, and the crew all jumped into the pool to rescue you.
Well, one crew did. I'm sorry, I mean one crew person, and that was Georgia.
Wallace Crabbe?
Yes, Georgia Wallace Crabbe. Yes, she jumped in. What was that film? Yes, I had to go. I talked about jumping in the pool, and then I went and. I was acting as though I were drowning, but simply by not emerging straight away and splashing, but staying under as long as I could. Because I've done some swimming in me time, you know. And bang! And Georgia had dived in to help me out, and it ruined the take. And they didn't have the time to dry the togs and they didn't have any spare togs either. So. It wasn't shot the way it should have been. But what was that film now? Georgia Wallace Crabbe. She was on the crew. She wasn't
produces as well as directs.
She does
a
now,
bit.
But whose film was that? Look, I can't remember.
I think Richard Wollstonecroft has got you to do a couple of things as well. But you're pretty game when it comes to throwing your body around.
I've done a bit of that in me time. Yeah. And of the, I forget how many films I've got credits for now. It's about 150, but there's a lot that I don't have credits for.
I think there's a few filmmakers here who have had John. Chris Windmill has had John in one of his films, and
back in the 80s.
Probably Nigel.
A few voiceovers.
Yeah.
Only. Wow. Would have thought there would have been some film somewhere.
I do remember John Wayne saying in a mini seminar like this, and I'm not quite sure which film he was talking about, I thought I had Sean Connery walking around the set.
Sure.
Blimey.
It's that physique I spoke of.
Oh, yeah. Is that what it is? It's not the accent, no. Right.
It's because you speak proper.
Yeah, that's what it is, yeah.
We're running a little short of time because you're not going to believe it. John has to go off and do some acting now. Seriously.
Yeah. And then
it's quite incredible, I know.
And then I catch the train back to Castlemaine.
Yeah. Just one last question from someone.
It was good. I just remember why I asked the film buffs thing was that it was the quickest way. If you were making an experimental film or an independent film in Melbourne, you know, you'd always get it mentioned if you sort of asked John whether he'd play a role.
Oh, they were very good in mentioning independent films. The first radio show I was ever on, not as a filmmaker, as an organiser of some screenings, was 1986 on John's on Film Buff's forecast, and I was pretty nervous and I froze at one point. But
I forgot
John and Paul Harris have been very supportive, of course, of independent filmmakers, and John's like a personal hero or legend for myself. He's been quite a mentor, and him and Adrian Martin, like these two figures that have meant quite a bit to me for 40 years, 30, 35 years since the early to mid 80s. One last quick question maybe from someone.
Don't miss your train, okay?
All right, thank you everyone for attending. Yeah.